All right, we are finally at Monster, the Act 1 closer. Now I gotta say, No Longer You is a spectacular song, so Monster has a bit to live up to. Like, you're coming on the heels of No Longer You. Deliver for me the drama. Now it's interesting we have a song after No Longer You, and that it is functioning as the Act 1 closer. I would assume this is an Odysseus aria. This is a solo song. We are, in this moment, ready for, or should be ready for, and should have the big dramatic shift we need in Odysseus. That's usually what an Act 1 closer will function as. Some good examples I can give would be something like, say, Defying Gravity as the Act 1 closer for the musical Wicked, where we have Elphaba throwing away the life she's known and embracing that she's gonna go off and do her own thing. Or you could even look at something like the Act 1 closer in the All I Ask of You reprise from the Phantom of the Opera, where we see the Phantom take a very dramatic shift from, you could almost say esoterically, more passively seducing Christine to taking the path of just outright active violence in pursuit of his obsession. We see the shift towards a far more angry character there. Another good example, actually, I would think, even though it's not an Act 1 closer, is actually, it's something like the third or fourth song. So it's the end of the prologue section of the musical Les Mis, where Jean Valjean basically goes through his massive change, you know, changing from having these lines of like, and going into, is there another way to go? This is what I would assume we're gonna get out of Odysseus here. And I think, honestly, this is what the musical should be building to. Looking at how Act 1 has gone through, while I think, yeah, it's a little rough, there's some kinks I think need to be ironed out in it. I kind of actually wish Odysseus had another solo song somewhere in the middle of Act 1 already. This needs to be the song that gives me the big shift. You have this chance for an aria, and while a lot of the songs have not really taken the time to just sort of stop and let Odysseus sit with his feelings the way like an aria traditionally does, and I kind of think we need a song like that. We need Odysseus to just kind of sit with his feelings a bit, especially after going through everything he has thus in the underworld. Again, I noted in the Odyssey, the underworld is this incredibly emotional thing that Odysseus goes through. It's like brutal on his emotions. I mean, again, the dude suffers in the Odyssey. It is truly the suffering of Odysseus is the story of the Odyssey. And in this case, while in the Odyssey he has seen other characters outside of Tiresias and his mom, who are the only two characters that cross over from the Odyssey to Epic the Musical, he also basically kind of goes on like a tour of the fallen heroes of Troy, in that he sees Achilles, he sees Greater Ajax, which is, it's such a sad moment, because Odysseus and Ajax ended on bad terms, and Ajax erased himself from the narrative, if you will, and Odysseus tries to reach out to him and talk to him, and Ajax just like, no, turns away. It's, oh man, it's so Greek. And it's so just like, no, my heart. And then he, as I have noted, sees Agamemnon, which is shocking for Odysseus, because he didn't know Agamemnon was dead. The only two people he meets, well, three technically if we include Elpenor. So like the three people he meets who he's shocked at are dead are Elpenor, his mom, which just absolutely wrecks him because she tells him, I died of grief waiting for you. That's literally it. There's no specifics as to how she died. You could probably that we would say like died of heartbreak, wasted away almost. And then Agamemnon, which just like shocks the hell out of him, because Agamemnon, yes, all of these Greek kings are kings, but I noted Agamemnon was like top of the pyramid, the totem pole. He would basically be like their commander-in-chief, and Odysseus and Agamemnon did not always agree. They did not always get along. Agamemnon had a talent for annoying other kings, but Odysseus did respect him and, you know, had known him for, we would argue, probably something like decades. So are they friends? Don't know, but comrades. And so finding out that not only has Agamemnon died, Agamemnon did the thing that Odysseus wanted. He went home and he got killed by his wife. It just like kind of rocks Odysseus a little. And again, provides great contrast for Odysseus is going to get home. And that's not going to happen. He'll find suffering in a different manner, but his wife is not the problem. Penelope, our girl, we love you. And while I have made the argument that I think having Agamemnon in there would provide great drama and set you up for leading Odysseus to what I'm assuming this song will be, which is like a brief, almost crisis of faith and a crisis in what he believes. and feeling like he needs to make a dramatic turn. I can also see the argument that I am coming from the perspective where I know who Agamemnon is. While I absolutely think it would be totally possible to put that in the narrative and like find a way to weave him in there so that we understand, maybe instead let's do a bit more work with Polites. The great irony that I'm finding is everyone seems to think that I hate Polites. I really don't. I kind of just like shrug at him in that I see what Jorge wants to do. It just feels a little incomplete. It feels like stuff is missing. And hey, that's what happens when I'm assuming his initial draft of this whole thing was probably massive. And that's when you start going in and you go like, yeah, I guess I don't need this here. Maybe this doesn't fit tonally, and you yank to create the concept album, which in the world of musical theater is like a prototype album. If you want a really good example of like concept album versus like final album, Hadestown is a really good example. I do believe you can find the concept album or albums even for that, because she went through a lot of kind of versions of it before she came to the final version. That is what was ultimately like put on Broadway, right? So that's why, in case anybody's curious why I keep calling Epic like a draft version, a better version would be to say it's like the prototype. This is the version that I would, to take the next step after taking a well-earned vacation, because I do think Jorge has earned a vacation, because from what I've come to understand, he spent years working on this, sort of just like zoned in, tunneled in. Man has earned a vacation, a good long one where he doesn't look and think about Epic. Then takes it maybe to like a workshop where people who are like professionals in the world of like musical theater and how, or in musicals and how like that storytelling works, like take it to some kind of workshop with professionals who can give him fresh eyes and iron out any potential remaining kinks. Like, yes, I see kinks, but it's my opinion on what the kinks are. And they may be things, this is an art you learn in working in a creative field, which I do, is you learn what critiques you get where you go, oh no, yeah, maybe I should adjust that. And others where you go, yeah, that's their opinion, but I think it works just fine, and here's my reasoning for why it works fine. So, that is a lot of blabbing.
Ooh, the ADHD medication has not kicked in yet.
Let me see what kind of dramatic shift I'm gonna get here with Odysseus. I did say no longer you, like, it's time to bring in that development. Let's give me that development. Let's see Odysseus and what he thinks of Monster. I know, 4 seconds in, I'm pausing. This is just a musical note that I want to say. That droning, that dun, is a nice callback to, it sounds like, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually the same note and the same droning sound that was used in the opening of The Horse and the Infant. So it's a nice kind of musical callback. Jorge is great with musical callbacks, including that da 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 da, which is the change to let us know like, oh, we're not back at Troy. This is something different. And that melody was just at the end of No Longer You. And I swear I've heard it somewhere else in the musical, though I can't put my finger on it. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, and or if I'm, hallucinating and No Longer You was the first time we brought up that melody. But one of you Winions, tell me in the comments, where else have I heard that melody besides No Longer You? It's a great little riff. I love it. I like having it in the guitar. It's a nice little opening there. Like, okay. And I think it's also establishing, hey, we're getting a chance for Odysseus to use that noggin of his, which is excellent. That's what I need this song to do.
How has everything been turned against us?
Well, the Cyclops, dude.
How did suffering become so endless? How am I to reunite with my estranged?
Well, you need to change. Oh. Not quite the same as me being so in sync, which really do need to stop that. I see what we're starting with here, trying to make sense of everything that's around him. I much prefer the line, how did suffering become so endless, to how did everything get turned against us? Well, because he knows exactly why everything's been turned against him, and we as the audience know too. This is not something that would confuse him, and it shouldn't confuse him. Again, in the context of the musical, you did that thing with Polyphemus, and you got Poseidon on your ass, and that is how you got in this whole mess, which admittedly he's in a mess. Like, again, the suffering of Odysseus is kind of like his story. He just, poor dude, lives to suffer.
How very Greek of him.
But the how did suffering become so endless? Yeah, that's really a big core of Odysseus's character in the Odyssey, and it's trying to clearly be made a big part of Odysseus's character here. And again, this is supposed to be the big emotional shift. He should be focusing on his suffering. Like, this is happening to me again and again, and now this blind dude I came down here to talk to is telling me I'm just gonna suffer more. That, like, the suffering is not over. You were at war for 10 years, a war you tried to even get out of, even though your bluff got called. And now you've been bounced around numerous islands. You can't catch a damn break. I'd be exhausted too. And then, you know, you go to this prophet, you're hoping he's going to tell you, hey, you'll make it home and it'll be great. And he's just like, as you are now, no, you gotta adjust. And even when you get there, I see yet more bloodshed. Like, oh, poor Odysseus, man, again, is in likely his mid to late 30s, nearing 40. Like, I'm in my early 30s. I'd be like, yo, my back hurts. I'm tired. What do you mean I gotta suffer more? I just want to go home. Which is Odysseus's big driving force, even in epic. Get home. Penelope and Telemachus. That's the goal. That's the finish line. How am I to reunite with my estranged? Again, how's he going to get home to his family, now finding out that one of his family members has died? And again, we didn't talk about his father in epic, mainly because you then gotta, like, deal with it when you get home to Ithaca, and that's, like, if you're really trying to streamline the narrative and fit it within a reasonable length of a musical, it's tough to bring in Laertes. Other than, he's worth mentioning depending on what you do with Penelope, because she pulls some insanely great crafty trickery with the suitors and this whole weaving and unweaving of a potential funerary shroud for Laertes. She gets busted, but it's like a cool moment. So again, a lot of this stuff that happens on Ithaca is part of what I've been jokingly calling the Telemachus problem, the Ithaca problem. Like, how you handle that part of the story, especially when you very understandably lay out the narrative in a linear fashion, so we're not doing, like, nesting stories the way that the Odyssey is structured. But he now knows his mom has died. Tiresias is telling him, sorry, dude, you're a little SOL on this one, hate to break it to you. So yeah, focusing on his suffering. I just think how did everything get turned against us? I would say maybe change that line. And that's just only because this song needs to be the dramatic shift. And while I understand what Jorge is doing here, this is where I wonder if something in a shifting of songs earlier in Act 1 to have him have that moment of, God, how is everything turned against us? This is an attitude I would expect a little earlier than here. And I'm acknowledging how much work was done to try and streamline the narrative. Like, again, the Odyssey is super sprawling. There's a lot in it, and it's very difficult to even look at it and go, how do I adapt this in a reasonable amount of time in the form of a musical? And I have been made to understand a lot of the comments, and of course there exist many cut songs, cut sagas even. And so I wonder if there was a song for Odysseus where he was already at the point of, wow, how has everything turned against us? Like, holy shit, why can't we catch a break? That already existed, that maybe got cut or, you know, trimmed down or the like, that could have been in there somewhere in the midst of Act 1 before we get to this point. Because a line like that feels a little late. But beyond that, one line, which again, just the first line, the other stuff, yes.
I'm surrounded by the souls of those I've lost.
Yeah, and even people he didn't know he'd lost.
I'm the only one whose line I haven't crossed.
Ah.
What if the greatest threat we'll find across the sea is me?
Interesting. What if the greatest threat we find across the sea is me? Good stuff. Psychologically, that's a super cool angle to take. I will say, I think some of the monsters you're due to encounter in Act 2 would maybe disagree with you, like Scylla and Charybdis looking at each other across the strait going, did you hear what he said? We're not the greatest threat. He thinks we're not scary. You know, the sirens all flapping about going, girl, did you hear what he said? He thinks we're not scary. How dare you think we're not scary?
Sorry, I really should just not make jokes or two voices.
But I do understand what he's saying. This is, again, we're turning him very inward, as he should, where Odysseus realizing, is it me? Am I the drama? Am I the problem? Which, like, you are the drama. The very Greek drama. I would also note, though, Odysseus, taking out even the monsters, you have Poseidon on your Yes. The greatest threat you'll find across the sea is the fact that Poseidon is on your ass, because you're on the sea. It's kind of his domain. Now, there are little pockets where Poseidon doesn't necessarily mess with, the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis being one of them, mainly because he kind of doesn't have to. Those two are enough to be a danger to everybody, and Poseidon knows that. I like the idea that, hey, Odysseus is realizing, maybe I'm the problem. You are. I mean, classic Greek hero, they are their own problems. There's actually a great line in the first book of the Odyssey from Zeus that, you know, kind of brings that idea home that humans are their own worst enemy, where he says, "Ah, how shameless the way these mortals blame the gods. From us alone, they say, come all their miseries." Yes. But they themselves, with their own reckless ways, compound their pains beyond their proper share. As Tiresias said, check yourself before you wreck yourself, and as Zeus and basically Homer said, you are the source of most of your problems. Weirdly enough, the Greeks, for, again, all of their flaws, one of the things I love about Greek mythology and the Greek heroes, Odysseus very much included, is this weird awareness the Greeks seem to have that humans are a problem, and they are often the problem. They are very much their own worst enemies. It's where you get in Greek tragedy, especially in Greek drama, this idea of the hamartia or hamartia, which is a fatal flaw. Every hero's got one. It's like they understood even when creating heroes, you know, these ideals, these characters, you're kind of, if you're going to blow them to the nth degree, basically, and make them do all these grand and epic things, that would include things like their hubris or their bad tendencies being also heightened. Psychologically, absolutely, you are the greatest threat you'll find across the sea. And from an emotional standpoint, again, this is where we're moving the needle. This is what this song is about. Move the needle.
What if I'm the monster? What if I'm in the wrong?
Haha!
What if I'm the problem that's been hiding all along? What if I'm the one who killed you every time I cave to guilt? What if I've been far too kind to foes, but a monster to ourselves? What if I'm the monster?
What if I'm the one who killed you every time I cave to guilt? While I like the idea that Odysseus is thinking, holy crap, I'm the reason all of these people were killed, and that he's starting to understand, you know, don't constantly blame outside forces, you had a massive part in that. Cave to guilt. My question with that, where are we getting that with, say, the Polyphemus encounter? Even arguably in the Poseidon encounter, because those are the two encounters we've had where characters have very dramatically died, whether, you know, they get their eggs cracked open like eggs, or it's Poseidon getting the Lacedaemonians to smash up all the ships and kill basically everyone. There was kind of a lack of guilt in a lot of that, a lack of remorse, which is what I found, you know, kind of interesting about those encounters, was the sort of cognitive dissonance that Odysseus was having, in that he's saying all these things. He talks the talks, but he doesn't walk the walk, if that makes sense. And the other thing here, maybe I've been far too kind to foes and a monster to ourselves. There was a really interesting comment, and I don't remember who said it, but I remember this comment on, I'm pretty sure it was the ruthlessness video that I did, where, you know, Poseidon has those lines, you are far too nice, mercy has a price, and I said, he's not nice. And this person, this commenter, pointed out that there is a big difference between being nice and being kind. And they're absolutely right. I thought it was a great comment, and it was a great point. There is a difference between being nice and being kind. Odysseus, in what we've seen so far, has put on the overtures of being nice. Like, here's this thing I'm doing for you, but by the way, I'm screwing you behind your back, which the Greeks would absolutely hate. Again, one of the things about his sort of trickiness that wasn't super appreciated was kind of how not honorable it was seen. And he's done a lot of things that I don't think are particularly kind, but can on the surface in some ways appear nice. Again, let's sort of CF Polyphemus, which again, we talked about in that video, Xenia, and how we recontextualize that encounter, and like, he is wrong from the jump in there. And he just sort of exacerbates and compounds the problem as that encounter continues. One thing I thought about later, after making the video and, you know, listening to the song again later, is when they talk about their sort of like battle with Polyphemus in there, before he passes out from the drugged wine, is they say stuff like, surround him, attack from behind, keep these things in mind, and stay in his blind spot and strike his heels. So they're talking about being able to completely surround Polyphemus, which means they could have gotten out of the cave. They could have run out of the cave. They could have completely avoided all of the violence. They could have gotten out just no problem. You know, you realized you're wrong, you can leave. But they perpetuated the violence. Odysseus led it. He led them to perpetuate this violence, right? And then what happened? Well, people died. Oh, and then Polyphemus blocked the cave so they couldn't get out. So then they had to perpetuate yet even more violence upon him and poke his eye out, which, ugh. And then, of course, as I say, in the context of the time period in which the musical is being set, he leaves him alive, which is just like, to the Greeks, that would be seen as the cruelest thing he could do. And Odysseus is trying to tell himself that what he's doing is a mercy. It's like, no, it's not. Poseidon made that very clear. Ruthlessness is mercy upon yourself. Again, something that Zeus made very clear in The Horse and the Infant by saying you need to kill Astyanax as part of this sacking of the city. You're going to leave yourself open to a potential blood feud, and you and all who you love will be killed if you leave Astyanax alive. So off goes Astyanax. Which, while the Greeks, again, do not take the idea of killing children, especially infants, lightly, blood feuds are super scary. And in mythology, they're everywhere. So Odysseus knows he's got to do it, even if he doesn't like it. He also knows the consequences of not killing an infant, say, in order to, like, avoid prophecy. Examples being things like Perseus, Jason, and even Oedipus. These are all characters who were, you know, someone told them that they need to be killed as they are children, and people go through kind of roundabout ways to get it done because they don't want to do it themselves, and then the child isn't killed and comes back and causes problems for that person, usually their antagonist. So he hasn't been kind, really, to anyone, I would argue. He's been unkind to just about everyone in the musical thus far. Foes and even friends alike, which again, you know, the phrase cognitive dissonance comes out in that he thinks he's doing something kind, but what he's doing isn't. The one thing I am concerned about the one thing that kind of irks me a little on that regard is, yes, as I always say, setting matters in that we are in ancient Greece, but let's also remember again, this guy's in like his, you know, late 30s, arguably, and maybe closer to 40. He has lived a life as a warrior, as a Greek king, just like straight out fighter. He has encountered combat many a time. He is trained for that, but also, again, he's very, very clever. He knows this. Come on, dude, let's be a little honest with yourself here. Which, like, by this point, oh my god, you really need to be and you should be. You're like almost there.
Is the Cyclops struck with guilt when he kills? Is he up in the middle of the night? Or does he end my men to avenge his friend and then sleep knowing he has done him right?
So you're acknowledging the sheep was his friend. So you're acknowledging you went into his home, you killed his friend, and then again continued to perpetuate violence on him.
Yeah, it makes you look bad.
I really think the lyrics should not spend time on him talking about outside characters and their feelings. This is all about, like, the change within Odysseus. Odysseus should be, and these lyrics should be way more inwardly focused. And while I will say that, again, setting matters, I don't think he would bother to consider how the Cyclops feels. Like, he doesn't have to. I mean, he seems pretty convinced that what he did was right. And even if now he's having the shift of what I did was wrong, you know, you've already covered that with, like, what if, you know, I'm the monster? Great, you've covered that. And while, yes, a song should continue to dig and explore, I think this is time wasted in these lyrics. In this song, I think, again, turn it more into Odysseus. Focus on him and his feelings, how he's feeling about stuff. I went to a war I didn't want to fight. I stayed there for a decade. I sacked a city. I chucked a baby off a wall. I promised my men I'd get them home, and I've led them only to more suffering and toil. You know, I'm the one who've done this.
When the witch turns men to pigs to protect her nymphs, is she going insane?
Yo, be careful,
or did
she's
she
got
learn
us.
to be colder when she got older and now she saves them the pain?
I will note, Circe does kind of seem to, in a more modern view, get a bad rap. This really comes out of post-classical scholarship, because the Greeks never portray her as any kind of monster. Like, she's very intimidating, she's very powerful, and in many ways very dangerous. She's a minor goddess. The gods are all kind of dangerous in their own measure. What she does in the Odyssey, it's not so much her turning men into pigs that's bad. It's that she does it under the guise of Xenia, and thus it's a Xenia violation, right? But that gets resolved. And after that, it's all good. And even her other appearances in other Greek myths, including, you know, the Argonautica and the like, she's never portrayed as monstrous. It's not this idea that she needed to learn to be cold, that like she started naive and had to be cold. She's always been very powerful. And I get that can seem maybe not that dynamic, but If you wanted to bring up something with regard to Circe, you could say that she was shaped by, say, an encounter, like as I talked about, Piccolo's landing on her island in the middle of the Gigantomachia, which she was watching firsthand happen. And the Gigantomachia was a massive battle, second really only to the Titanomachia. So she has witnessed violence on a scale that Odysseus cannot comprehend. And this is something I thought about afterwards with regards to why I thought Circe felt a little underwhelming as a saga. I mean, especially coming off of Ocean Saga, which I really, really liked a lot. Is this idea of, well, we need to humanize the monster. But Circe's not a monster. Greeks didn't view her as a monster. Dangerous? Yes. Not a monster. Made very clear when you meet the, actual monsters, if you will, of the Odyssey. Like, Polyphemus, absolutely monster in the Odyssey. Scylla and Charybdis, the Sirens. These are all these are the monsters. Short version, again, don't spend time talking about Circe or Polyphemus. Look at yourself, Odysseus. Turn that gaze inward.
When a god comes down and makes a fleet drown, is he scared that he's doing something wrong? Or does he keep us in check so we must respect him, and now no one dares to piss him off?
No.
Just no. I really don't think I need to reiterate my opinion on the treatment of the gods, and I think everybody knows. So just no. The 3 stanzas here, while I understand why Jorge is doing them, kind of in a way almost recapping Act 1, I think it's time wasted. We've just had those. We got it. We know. Give us Odysseus and how he's feeling. Have him really verbalize what he's feeling and what he's seeing about himself.
Does a soldier use a wooden horse to kill sleeping Trojans cause he is vile? Or does he throw away his remorse and save more lives with guile? If I became the monster,
This.
threw that guilt away,
Okay, not guilt,
would
but
that make us stronger? Would it keep our foes at bay? If I became the monster to everyone but us, and made sure we got home again, who would care if we're unjust?
this is what the 3 previous stanzas should have been. Let me put it this way. He needs to be more specific in his guilt. While I understand, because, again, I see the comments, everybody talking about the guilt he has over Astyanax. We haven't dug into that a lot in the lyrics. From what I'm understanding, there were cut songs and stuff that talked about it more. This is again where I feel like maybe there was an Odysseus aria or something in the middle of Act 1 that might be missing, to give me and give an audience more of the how much he's being tortured by, say, what he had to do to Astyanax. If that's going to be the big initial thing that creates this guilt and this whole idea of oh my god, I know what I did was right, but I'm so upset about it. To then get to this, and then I'd go oh, that's the guilt he's talking about. Because other than that, which happened in the Troy saga, the very start of the musical, but has not really been mentioned hence, he hasn't really caved to guilt in other situations. He can feel guilt over those situations, but he hasn't caved to guilt in those situations. Guilt hasn't affected his decision-making, so it seems. So that's the one little word. I'm yeah, I'm a little, niggling a little with that word. But beyond that, yes, these are what the 3 previous stanzas should have been. And then you could, continue on in that train even more. And yeah, does a soldier use a wooden horse to kill because he's vile and then, save more lives with guile? I mentioned that Odysseus, while absolutely loathed by the Trojans and then later also the Romans, because they are meant to be descendants of the Trojans. This idea that he does things with guile is seen as not super honorable, and other Greeks and even Greek kings would be a little wary of him with regard to that. They're super glad he's on their team, but they still kind of side-eye him, and that is part of why the idea of the wooden horse was eventually kind of used as the Hail Mary pass. It was the last option. So I like that he's acknowledging that this guile that he uses is not necessarily prized, but maybe he should use more of it. He should, lean into that part of his personality that's not necessarily seen as honorable by the world around him, but it gets results.
If I became that, ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. And deep down I know this well. I lost my best friend, I lost my mentor, my mom, 500 men gone, this can't go on.
550, my dear. There's a whole ship of people going, does he not care about us? Ship number 11 is hey, we died too. Again, we're not gonna, by this point, Numbers don't matter, math is fake. This is the first time he's called Polites his best friend. The first time we've gotten that phrase to emphasize just how important he is. To really say, this is my best friend. He's not just my friend, he's my best friend. Bring that phrase in earlier in the musical. You know, again, the irony, like people say that like I hate Polites and I wish he weren't here. Like I'm going, the way I see it, I see what Jorge's doing with him. If you want to use this character in that way, just like, give me a bit more. Ironically, I'm saying give me more than just open arms and then his death. Yeah, build. Let's build the rage, let's build the grief, build the I need to change. I need to, lean in more to my guile and lean in more to these things that, in the words of like Jean Valjean, this is all I have lived for, this is all I have known, this world that I have known, or, Elphaba, something has changed within me. I think we're sort of dancing around words like that, because ultimately this is all driving towards what's his goal? Get home. We'll say like, if there are rules to the game of the world of the Greek heroes, he hasn't really been following those rules, but he thinks he has. So if he's just gonna make it more overt, let's throw off the guise of me even pretending to follow these rules, I'm just gonna straight up not. That's what I feel is happening here, is he's trying to strip himself of the cognitive dissonance, right? Of, oh, but I'm doing things that are so nice and like I'm totally in the right. So what's actually interesting here is now that I'm, sitting here trying to think about it, it's like the only real change is almost a performative change.
Must get to see Penelope and Telemachus. So if we must sail through dangerous oceans and beaches, I'll go where Poseidon won't reach us. And if I gotta drop another infant from a wall in an instant so we all don't die,
first time we've mentioned Aston Axe. So we're not gonna make the overtures being nice anymore.
Become the monster.
Bringing back some brass droning. Okay, alright, and there we close out Act 1. I will say the song feels a little bit of a letdown after No Longer You, maybe just because I really like No Longer You. Like, wow, again, that song in my top 2. Right under Ruthlessness. This is sort of what I figured the song was going to go for with like, we need to give Odysseus the dramatic shift. In this case, it feels like the shift in Odysseus, because I do want to point this out, feels a little performative. I think that's on purpose, is that Odysseus thinks he's been kind and thinks he's been playing by the rules of the game, if you will, when he really hasn't. And now he's like, well then now I'll just be the monster. And it's like, bro, you kind of already are. You've already been monstrous in this world. I think it's more for him the idea that like, I'm not gonna even pretend I'm nice anymore. I'm just gonna be very actively aggressive. Take a little note from Diomedes over there. Just like, woo! Shoot first, ask questions later. Which I had mentioned Phantom, where he goes from a much more sort of esoterically passive seduction of Christine to the closing of Act 1 to much more active outright violence. I think that's sort of what Jorge is aiming to get here with Odysseus. But this is a song that has been missing. Part of this song almost feels like it could have happened earlier in the act, and more of the actual shift could have happened in here in the underworld. But that is the closing of Act 1. So where do we sit at the end of Act 1? Contrary to apparently a lot of people, I do actually like the musical. Yes, I critique it and I point out stuff, but I am enjoying it. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't continue. I would have just stopped, put up a note and said, sorry guys, I don't like it, I'm out. I very much like the musical. The music is like really the highlight of it. The music and the voice cast. I think those are the strongest elements that are here. It's very clear that Jorge is a great composer and he's a great songwriter in terms of melody and doing musical callbacks and theming and leitmotifs and everything else. I think there is weakness in some of the storytelling and writing and lyrics. Yes, absolutely. While acknowledging, again, as I've said many times, the Odyssey is fucking hard to adapt. And I also will point out that I you know, very much as I would say, like, the musical on an objective level for me is a mixed bag. Like, there's stuff I like, stuff I don't, stuff I have really no opinion on. But from a subjective viewpoint, like, yeah, I'm enjoying it. I like it. Do I have problems with it? Sure. Like, that's totally normal that I have problems with it. But I still enjoy it. Because I never went into this expecting a one-to-one of Odyssey to musical. Like, that'd be fucking impossible. And I didn't expect it to be a, like, rigid musical that, like, only classics lovers could enjoy. Like, good God, that would probably be so fucking boring. I see immense amount of talent. I see immense amount of effort. I see the time, the blood, sweat, and tears that has gone on to try and make this. It's like, it's a daunting task to take on. And there's great stuff going on here. So Odysseus, his journey, his inner journey is really like pushing a man to the brink and pushing him off the cliff, past his breaking point. How far are you willing to go? Go further. And go further. And go further. And all of it building and building and building, culminating in what will be the incident with Helios's cattle, which is going to completely rock his world. And then he's going to be held basically hostage for like 7 years. And then he's going to come home, going to get there and have to essentially pull a Trojan Horse 2.0 and a sacking of Troy 2.0. So man is in for a lot of suffering in Act 2. But with some fun encounters and ways that I'm so curious to see how the musical adapts, you know, the back half of his journeys. You know, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, the incident with the cattle, and then eventually Ithaca. Like, I hope we devote a huge chunk of Act 2 to him getting home to Ithaca, and just because it's so cool in the Odyssey, and like it's in several stages, and you're just like sitting there on edge being like, oh, shit's gonna go down. Yeah, no, coming out of Act 1, I like it. It's got kinks for me in places, but I'm having a good time, and I look forward to Act 2, and I would guess that Act 2 would mean we're off to meet the Sirens first. We're up, we're off, and away we go.